Welcome to Tipping Point Show. I'm Jimmy Evans, and we have a very special show today. I'm going to be talking with a regular guest on the show, Bill Koenig, about current events in Israel and the direct connection between American foreign policy on Israel and God's judgment on the United States. We're talking about anti-Semitism on college campuses, anti-Semitism worldwide, the war between Iran and Israel, world events that are happening right now, Russia, China. We're talking about all kinds of things, but kind of central related to Israel. And before I get into that interview, let me just say, Bill, Mark Hitchcock and I have a new book. We've written a series called What's Next. Our first book was on the Iran or the Israel-Gaza war. Many of you have gotten that. This one now releases this coming Friday, April 26th, on Amazon. Is called Artificial Intelligence and the Antichrist, AI and the Antichrist. What's next? We're talking about what's going on in the world currently and what's about to happen. Well, what's going on in the world right now is artificial intelligence and the rise of the Antichrist spirit, and we believe the Antichrist is going to come very soon. He'll step on the world scene very soon. The rapture. We have another book coming out right after this on the rapture of the church. These are the things that we believe are coming next. And so this releases this coming Friday on Amazon. Be sure and get that, because this will bless you and help you and tell you what's going on right now in the world. And I'm very excited today to have Bill Koenig joining me. I've mentioned his book, Eye to Eye. This is his book. I've mentioned it many times. We're going to be talking about it today as we're talking about current events in Israel and what's going on around the world. Bill is a journalist, and he served as a White House correspondent. He has a news service called Koenig World Watch Daily. His website has constantly updated stories. We're going to be talking about his website and from some articles on his website today. And they draw from a large variety of news sources, and it can be found at watch.org. Bill has a great understanding of world events and how they align with Bible prophecy related to Israel. Bill, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Jimmy. Great to be with you.
It's good to have you back. You're always so resourceful related to everything going on in the world because you have such a great grasp on just geopolitical kind of things that are happening. Israel, obviously, you wrote your book, Eye to Eye, and I think when we met, you were kind of surprised that I was telling everybody about your book. I think it's one of the best books that's ever been written, because what it does is it documents the fact that whoever blesses Israel, God blesses. Whoever curses Israel, God curses, and especially when you start dividing up the land. So what do you see when Israel right now, because you're in Israel a lot, you're a very strong supporter of Israel, what do you see happening in Israel right now? I know it's a mess, but related to two-state solution, forcing them to divide the land, all that.
Well, Jimmy, I think framing it, how do we get to where we are today? On September 22nd, Benjamin Netanyahu was at the UN General Assembly, gave a powerful address, but unfortunately he came up with his little map of the future Middle East. Peace between Israel and the Arabs. This was Biden administration pressure on him to normalize relationship between Israel and the Saudis. And also that week, Crown Prince bin Salman was on U.S. TV talking about this new time of peace between Israel and the Saudis and the Middle East. And then 15 days later, what was incredible excitement and potential about peace in the Middle East that Netanyahu was talking about went complete opposite direction with the heinous attacks of October 7th. So we went from great hope to a reality of a whole new Middle East that we're seeing right before our eyes.
Ezekiel 38, is the Gog and Magog war, and it's interesting there that it says that when the Gog and Magog coalition invade Israel, it says Sheba, Dedan, Tarshish, and her young lions confront the Gog Magog coalition. Well, Sheba and Dedan, that's the Arabian Peninsula. And last week, when Iran bombed Israel, Jordan and Saudi Arabia were shooting down their missiles, shooting down their drones and stuff. It's interesting that the ancient scriptures tell us current geopolitics. And so Saudi Arabia, even though they have not entered into a normalization of relationships with Israel, they're not enemies. Jordan, they're not enemies at this point. Iran, they're enemies, and they're vowed enemies of Israel. So the attack against Israel from Iran, October 7th, one of the remarkable things, Bill, is you would think that October 7th would turn people against Hamas, but it turned them against Israel. Why did that happen?
Well, it's the anti-Semitic root. We've talked about that, Jimmy. The anti-Semitism is deep. Former ambassador to the U.S., Ron Dermer, from Israel, told us a few years ago that the anti-Semitic root it went underground after the Holocaust, but it's resurfaced and it's going to get worse and worse. And that's what we're seeing right now, this anti-Semitism that's breaking out across America, that's breaking out around the world, is very, very problematic and a great concern for the state of Israel and Jewish people all over the world. And it's very difficult in countries like France, which has 6 million Muslims and 600,000 Jews. Right. And we're seeing what's happening in the UK. And then also the United States with these Ivy League schools. That's who's getting a lot of attention right now. And it's very, very sad. I mean, the enemy is not Israel. Israel just wants to be left to be a productive part of the international community. But as we've seen in the UN, through the UN Security Council, there is this it's to the point that it's totally out of control. And it's getting worse now because Israel had to respond. They had to respond, and they have responded, Jimmy, and unfortunately it's worked to their disadvantage.
Well, they needed, what I expected, honestly, was a lot stronger response. But they had a very limited response because, from what I understand, I want you to speak into this, the Biden administration was making a deal with them that they would allow them to invade Rafah, have a military operation in Rafah in the Gaza, if they would make a very limited strike in response to Iran. Do you believe that?
That's exactly right. And that's what we're hearing through back channels. So they kind of let the Iranians know through their Turkish in-betweens. And that's what they told Turkey, just basically tell Iran not to overdo it. But according to our former CENTCOM leader, General Kenneth McKenzie, what was thrown at Israel
was massive.
Yeah. So their plan with the cruise missiles, the ICBMs, and the attack drones was to do a significant amount of damage to Israel. But supernaturally, that did not happen.
Supernatural. There's nothing. I heard about it when it was happening, and I just thought, I'll wake up tomorrow and it's just going to be. And of course, Brian Schrager, we have a correspondent there, it was happening over his head.
That's right.
He lives in Jerusalem. And he just said he saw these explosions, but nothing hit. It's supernatural. And you were mentioning before the show, they kind of spent a lot of their arsenal. That's part of the benefit.
That's what General McKenzie said. If they had to go to war tomorrow, they've thrown so many ICBMs and cruise missiles at Israel, they would be completely depleted and not be able to defend themselves.
And I also heard about half of them blew up on launch or didn't make their target, so that doesn't speak to their quality control.
No, absolutely. And I think also, as usual, the Lord had a plan. He had angelic protection.
That's right.
We've heard of miracles over the years of how God intervenes and intercedes, and I know there was a tremendous amount of people, my wife Tanya and myself and others, were praying on that Friday during Shabbat for angelic protection, because everybody thought it'd be 24 to 48 hours, and we saw some incredible supernatural intervention by the God of Israel to protect his country and his people. And when you think about that again, Jimmy, I mean, there's one young lady I think was injured in one of the actual weapons that actually hit the ground. That was it. That was the extent of it.
It's amazing. Well, I heard Benjamin Netanyahu give a speech last year, and he said the history of Israel requires miracles. Isn't that amazing?
It does.
And they do. So the Iran hits. Now, Israel's response, now again, this is my understanding, was not by the IDF, it was by Mossad in Iran. Is that true?
I've heard that, still trying to determine whether that's not, it was a brilliant plan.
Yeah, brilliant plan. And well, they hit them, they just let them know, we're right at your back door.
Absolutely. And what they did, they used F-35 jets. They did nothing no Israeli activity inside of Iran. They used missiles from our stealth jets to hit targets inside of Iran, knocked out their S-300 defense system, And this is the Isfahan area, right near the Natanz nuclear facilities.
Right.
So this was kind of a shot against the bow. We know where you are. We know this is what we can do. We did it with very little effort, and it was incredibly successful. So it was a message to Iran, and I think the two things: one, having so many weapons knocked out of the sky, and number two, having a successful penetration of the missile defense system that Iran has, and then to hit Isfahan the way they did. In other words, we could have done much worse.
In other words, they shot so many, drones, missiles, everything at Israel, none of them hit.
That's right.
We shot one at them, it hit.
That's right.
Or however many they shot, they all hit. So we penetrated their defense systems. So, Bill, this is intensifying. And when we had a tour scheduled to Israel last November, December, and on October 7th when that happened, 2 days later, American Airlines canceled our tickets in November, December. And I told someone, for an airline to cancel that far, they knew something. They knew something very serious. And so since then, it's just gotten worse and worse. It's still very intense today. So Israel is in this crucible. They're surrounded by enemies, literally fighting a 7-front war that's not going away. All of their enemies are still there. If they don't finish the war in Gaza, they will reconstitute. Hamas will reconstitute.
That's right.
And so, but they still have all their enemies. Iran is still very much vowed to their destruction. There is no such thing as a two-state solution. The Palestinians don't want a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution. Is that correct?
Right. Exactly. And, right after October 7th, here we have President Biden telling the international community, now's the time to do the two-state because that'll neutralize Hamas and Hezbollah. It's absolutely, totally absurd.
Absurd.
Totally absurd. But this is the mindset. And there's a greater desire right now for the two-state than ever because they want to stop all these problems. It's cost the EU and the United States a tremendous amount of aid, but it's not going to happen. And also the Biden administration right now is getting ready to get back after the normalization talks between Israel and the Saudis. This is part of their motivation. But at the same time, now they're sanctioning IDF troops, this one section, this Orthodox section of Israel. And the problem there, Jimmy, we know once we start sanctioning one battalion or one group of soldiers, it will be more and more, and this will empower the international community to do the same thing.
Yes.
And this does not bode well. And we saw the eye-to-eye pressure of March 25th at the UN, when the UN Security Council voted to call on Israel to ceasefire, and the United States abstained. And within a few hours, we had a collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge.
Now, you texted me that day. And so let me first of all say, Eye to Eye is a book where Bill documents, you're a journalist, and you document, this is not emotion, this is not, trying to make something out of nothing. You absolutely document that every time that the United States has tried to divide Israel, our foreign policy has been anti-Israel, whatever, there's been some kind of a natural disaster, a historic natural disaster or something. So go back to March 27th.
Yeah, it's in the same day or within 24 hours. So you have the event, Jimmy, and then the catastrophe.
Right.
And the greater the pressure, the greater the corresponding event. And the UN Security Council, there's 5 permanent members, 15 other members. 5 permanent members have to completely unanimously agree or have no vetoes in order for a resolution to pass. So we have France, the UK, United States, China, and Russia that are on the UN Security Council. 4 of the 5 voted to force Israel to stop or cease fire right around the time of Ramadan.
Right.
And the United States abstained. And about 1:30 in the morning, the day after, the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. I mean, look at Francis Scott Key. He wrote our Star Spangled. Star Spangled Banner. You think of the significance of our national anthem.
Absolutely.
It's one of those events. And then we also, the Biden administration was talking about sanctioning and increasing sanctions. On April 5th, we had a 4.8 earthquake in the Northeast. It was 7 miles from White House Station, New Jersey, right at the time they were talking about sanctions on Israel. So I feel the intensity right now. I feel the just an abnormal, what you're sensing, Jimmy, you mentioned, is just a very unusual time of disruption, atmospheric and spiritual disruption.
Absolutely.
With the target Israel.
It seems like October 7th, and we talk about anti-Semitism, it's not an ideology. No one can really articulate the ideology behind anti-Semitism. It's a spirit. And it's like on October 7th, there was just like the gates of hell were opened. And you see school children, the college campuses, and what's happening. I was watching the news last night because they were arresting a bunch of people, and there were college demonstrations all over America, not pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel. And so I saw an article yesterday, I think it was the New York Times, and this Jewish woman said, "My family and I are moving back to Israel. We don't feel safe here any longer." And America has been the safe haven for the Jews, except for Israel. And now Jews are having to move back. So this is watch.org. This is Bill's website, great website. I look at it every day. And let's talk about some of the headlines. And so, U.S. report accuses Israel of causing severe human rights crisis in Gaza. You believe that?
Well, Hamas is the reason for that.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it's Isaiah 5:20, call evil good, good evil. And this is the momentum of this building. It's going to International Criminal Court. We're going to be in The Hague on July 4th and 5th, defending the state of Israel biblically and also legally. And this is building, and it's going to get worse and worse. I mean, there's a feeding frenzy taking place right now in the international community having to do with the state of Israel. And this anti-Semitic root is growing exponentially around the world.
And what I hate, the International Criminal Court, which is it's an illegitimate court, because it violates sovereignty across the board.
Absolutely.
And so South Africa sued Israel for apartheid or whatever they were suing them for. And Israel showed up at the International Criminal Court defending themselves. I wish they wouldn't have done that, because they're giving them legitimacy. Because then when they make a judgment, the so-called, it would be binding. There's another headline. It says, Russia warns the world is on the brink of a direct military clash between nuclear powers. And of course, Putin, Russia's economy is smaller than the state of Texas. And so they really, in an economic sense, they're a regional power. However, they have, I think, over 5,000 Soviet-era nuclear weapons, which makes them, a force to be reckoned with. Do you believe that we're going to be facing some kind of a World War III scenario?
Well, the concern is for a couple things. Iran and Russia are closer together than ever before, and they're trading technologies. These Iranian drones are being used quite effectively in the Ukraine. Matter of fact, it was the same scenario that they were going to put on Israel that they've had success with in the Ukraine. The scenario of the drones, the missiles, the rockets, and it's worked very effectively in the Ukraine. It didn't work in Israel supernaturally for supernatural reasons, and very good defense. This relationship with Russia and Iran is improving to the point that they are watching things very closely in Syria and Lebanon, and they, with our Gog-Magog, Ezekiel 38:39 focus, we're waiting and watching two things. What Russia is going to do in the Ukraine. Putin said even today that this $60 billion amount of money the United States is going to give the Ukraine is going to very likely accelerate Russian activity in the Ukraine, number one. And number two, I think they're getting closer and closer to Iran. And we've seen what Erdogan's doing right now also.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, he's one of the great threats that we're watching very closely. Have for a while. He kind of went quiet for a while. Yeah. But having the leader of Hamas in a meeting the other day with a photo op said a lot. And they're talking about another flotilla, which created a lot of problems 10 plus years ago when they did that. So we have Putin and the nuclear threat, and they use that fairly often. Former President Medvedev talks about Russia's nuclear capability. So very problematic, Jimmy. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I can tell you one thing: the Ukrainian war has brought Russia and Iran closer together than ever before.
Yeah.
And Russia also has a very significant position inside of Syria. And we've even heard rumors they're conceptually or have moved troops to the Israelis' northern border, southern border of Syria.
I've heard that. Of course, right now you have Turkey, Russia, Iran. They're in Syria. The Gog and Magog war is Russia, Iran, Turkey, and some northern African nations, and so they're all aligned. They all hate Israel, and especially you see Russia, Iran, and Turkey. The Gog and Magog war is unfolding, and now there is in Ezekiel 38 it says that God is going to put a hook in the jaw of Gog and Magog and pull them down. In other words, what he's saying is, I'm going to provoke you. You're not going to make this decision. I'm going to make it for you. Now, when Israel responded to Iran's attack, very limited, very surgical. But Elam, there's a prophecy in Jeremiah 49 that talks about a judgment against Elam. And Elam is southern Iran. And that's where they have many of their nuclear installations. And I was wondering this week if they would strike, southern Elam. It would be a massive strike. But the interesting thing about Jeremiah 49, it says, in the height of your power, I'm going to knock the bow out of your hand, and I'm going to judge your princes, not the people. The people of Iran are great, and the biggest revival in the world is happening in Iran. And so, but he says, I'm going to knock the bow, your launchers, out of your hand, and I'm going to judge your princes. So that's going to happen one of these days, and I don't know the exact timing on everything, but it's just all happening.
Absolutely. I remember when we first talked right after October 7th, and we discussed, is this the time? I said, well, Iran's very patient, they're very strategic, and they have a plan. That's and they're going to, when we talk about Soleimani was taken out in January 2020 it wasn't 2020, it was 2000, in that area of time. No, I'm sorry, January 6, 2020, the Trump administration took out Soleimani.
Right.
They took out al-Baghdadi. They took out the biggest threats to Israel at that time. But they didn't do anything. Iran didn't do anything. They've had nuclear scientists taken out. They've had all kinds of things happen within their country. They've seen one shipment after another taken out in Syria, in Lebanon, but done nothing. But what's interesting, Jimmy, this time when Israel strategically hit the Iranian consulate right next to the embassy in Damascus, that was a trigger. And Iran had to do something. And even to the extent that they did something so significant and it failed, had to set things back. But nonetheless, we're watching Putin, Erdogan, and Khomeini make their moves right now. So we're watching them very closely to see the timing of these.
I've been preaching on prophecy for 42 years, and back in the 80s when I started preaching on prophecy, I would say these things like Gog and Magog is going to happen. Well, Turkey was friends with Israel, and they were doing military maneuvers with them and all that kind of stuff, 15 years ago. And all of a sudden, in the last really 10 years, especially 5 years, you see everything coming together. But what's happened today, Bill, since October 7th, there's always been anti-Semitism, but we had the Abraham Accords, things were cooling off, we recognized Jerusalem as being, the capital of Israel, all those things. But since October 7th, and what I say is, we're not going back. The genie's not going back in the bottle. This is escalating toward what the Bible said would happen. Now, let me go back to anti-Semitism for just a minute. College campuses, my friends on about October 9th were in London, and they landed at the London airport, and from the airport to their hotel was one pro-Palestinian demonstration after the other one, not one pro-Israel in London. Of course, London is, very Muslim. There was they've had all kinds of problems there. But the Bible says that in the end, that Israel will be surrounded by their enemies. And Zechariah 12 is one of the scriptures you have on your website.
That's right.
And so what do you see happening right now that is escalating towards Zechariah 12?
The fact that Iran had so little success with their barrage of weapons, I think it set them back a little bit. I think that just really completely shocked them.
Right.
That they could throw that much at Israel and nothing hit.
Right.
And then for Israel, a week later, to strategically take out their S-300 missile defense system and hit that area around Isfahan, the base there, right near their nukes. They're going, oh my gosh, we're not as close to being ready as we thought.
Yeah.
Because what would have probably happened right after that, they might have set Hezbollah loose with their 150,000 rockets and the 15,000 missiles that are deployed in Iran, Yemen, and Iraq.
Right.
So I think they're kind of regrouping right now. But we know in history, Israel's success is when they're preemptive. They've got to hit first.
Right.
And they've done it quite well in the past. The question today is, where is the red line? Where is Israel's red line? You mentioned the Saudis and Jordan. Probably the only good deal from the Iran nuke deal is the level of cooperation between Israel and the Saudis, right, the Emirates, and Jordan is greater today than ever before because they understand Israel's not their problem.
Right.
It's the Shiites from Iran.
That's right.
And some intel people will say, no, Israel's not the first to be nuked, it's Saudi Arabia. And there's people in high positions in Saudi Arabia that believe that. So I was at the government press office a few years ago, and one of my contacts there said, who would have ever thought that we would have the relationship that we do today with the Saudis, right, with Bahrain, with the Emirates, with Jordan that we do, and even Egypt, because they don't trust Iran.
You know, I hope you enjoyed the show today, and I hope you are a subscriber. First of all, on YouTube, subscribe to our channel here. Just hit the subscribe button, but also become a subscriber on endtimes.com, $7 a month or $77 a year. It is a great value because we have podcasts that come out all week long, articles, breaking news, all kinds of things to keep you encouraged. Every Sunday I do a devotional. It's called A Good Word. It's just a positive word to start the week out. And of course, tomorrow Mark Hitchcock has his podcast, Marking the End Times. We have Brian Schrager from Israel on Tuesdays giving updates there, and many other articles, breaking news, endtimes.com. Thank you for being a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, go to endtimes.com and become a subscriber. We have our conference coming up. We have all the resources there on endtimes.com. So we'll see. I'm Jimmy Evans. I'm so glad that you've joined me today. Today is a very special program because we're talking all about Israel, what's going on over there right now concerning Iran and the Iran attack last weekend, and now Israel's response to that attack. Brian Schrager is going to be joining me here in just a minute from Israel, talking about all that. Of course, he's been on the ground there this entire time, and so I can't wait to get Brian's insight on all of this. Now, before I get into this interview, let me just say we have our conference coming up September 20th and 21st. Dr. David Jeremiah will be there. We have Max Lucado, Pastor Ed Young, Rabbi Jonathan Kahn, myself, Billy Crone, Dr. Mark Hitchcock. We're going to all be there on Friday night and Saturday morning, September 20th and 21st. Go to endtimes.com. Get your seat right now. Bring a group with you. We would love to have you. It's going to be a great conference. We also live stream it. And so if you can't come, you can watch it from all over the world, live stream it. Go to endtimes.com. Also, we do marriage conferences. You know, a lot of people associate me with the End Times, which of course I teach on the End Times. I'm sitting in the studio of XL Marriage here in Southlake, Texas. And so we have a conference coming up this weekend in Houston. If you're married, you want to be married, whatever, it's at Grace Church in Houston, Texas. Go to xlmarriage.com/conference and you can sign up and be there. I'll be speaking Friday night and this Saturday morning in Houston at Grace Church for this XL Marriage Conference. It's an excellent time just to tune up your marriage. Maybe you have issues that you're working through. Myself, Dave and Ashley Willis, Dan Leanne, Pastor Garrett Booth and his wife Andrea. We have some great speakers. You're going to get some great ministry. We'd love to have you. I'd love to see you there this coming Friday and Saturday. I'm pleased today to have joining me on the show our endtimes.com Israel correspondent, Brian Schrager. He's worked as a journalist in Israel since 2014, serving for 2 years as the head of the news division for Bridges for Peace, and in 2020 until 2021 as the bureau chief for the USA Radio Network. He's joining me today to talk about current events in Israel. Well, Brian, thank you for joining me today, and You do a great job as our endtimes.com Israel correspondent. We appreciate all that you do. This a powder keg over there right now, to say the least. And last Saturday, of course, Israel bombed the consulate in Damascus the week before, and Iran vowed a response. And of course, you guys saw the response last Saturday. You were in Jerusalem when that happened, weren't you?
I sure was. They started, I received, I knew the bombs were coming. That's when I filed a report on, Sunday night, my time. It was about midnight. And then a couple of hours later, maybe 3 hours later, time was strained. All of a sudden, everything exploded right outside my porch.
Wow.
It was, and I thought, what in the world? I didn't think enough time had passed for the missiles and the drones and to come. But boy, they were there, and it was a fireworks show. I mean, right literally above me. I saw the interceptions. I saw bright orange buckyballs falling to the earth, which I think were continental missiles breaking up and falling down. It was very, very dramatic.
Well, Israel's already on edge, and there's so much trauma, and that was just added to it. So, I mean, you guys are, incredible for putting up with all that. What is Israel's response at this moment? Now, we're taping this on Tuesday. This is going to air on Wednesday. And so what do you hear about Israel's response to the bombing?
Right now, what is officially being said is that the War Cabinet has met and is discussing a response and is promising to give one. What that response will be, how it will look, is not known. Netanyahu is having to be delicate in his communications with Joe Biden, because the U.S. obviously is a big, big ally of Israel, supplying weapons and funds, and was an invaluable help on Sunday night when those missiles hit, because the U.S. intercepted a bunch of those missiles and drones, as in fact did Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the UAE, and I think France also intercepted or helped with all of this. So Israel did not knock down 99% of these missiles by itself.
Right.
It was a coordinated effort, and that was actually quite remarkable. And so now going forward, there's this thing that Biden has told Netanyahu, don't retaliate. Well, that's not going to wash here.
Right.
It just isn't going to wash.
Right.
The military here is absolutely determined that there must be a response, not for revenge, but for deterrence. If there isn't a response, then Israel is perceived as weak. And in this part of the world, you have to respond. Yeah. And you have to respond in kind. Again, it's not retaliation. And Israel certainly has a lot of reasons, as you and I both know, to do something in Iran because of its nuclear program, and which is on the verge of developing nuclear weapons right now.
Right.
So what kind of response it will be, we just don't know.
Well, Jeremiah 49 is a prophecy against Elam. Elam is southern Iran. And the prophecy says, I'm against you. God says, I'm against you, Elam. And I'm going to knock the bow out of your hand in the height of your power, and I'm going to judge your princes, not the people. Because the people of Iran, millions are turning to Jesus and getting saved.
Yes,
but
they are.
The leaders in Iran are corrupt, and they, of course, believe that Allah has called them to destroy Israel and to usher in the end time. So this is a religious war. This is not just a conventional war. This is a religious war. You agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And in fact, as I'm sure you're aware, Ali Khamenei, the so-called supreme leader of Iran, has repeatedly over the years said that Iran's number one goal is to provoke the return of the Mahdi, the Islamic Messiah figure, who is going to come in, according to their theology, is going to come in and set everything right. And so part of the reason for creating chaos is to provoke the Mahdi to come. This is a cardinal doctrine in Iran, but the world doesn't discuss it because I think it's uncomfortable with this whole idea of the theological motivation, the religious motivation that is behind what Iran is doing.
And the problem, Brian, with the world's response in trying to pressure Israel into a two-state solution, they don't understand the religious ramifications of this. Hamas is an example. Hamas is Muslim. It is a Muslim group that is vowed to the annihilation of the Jews. Well, the Palestinians in other places in the West Bank, they believe the same stuff. That's why the Palestinian Authority won't renounce October 7th or Hamas, because they're very popular among the Palestinians.
Exactly, and Abbas does not want to lose political power. So, eventually he has to pass away. I think he's in his 80s.
Oh yeah.
He is immensely unpopular among the Palestinians, and yet Hamas is very popular.
Yes. What a dangerous combination. And we're trying to push Israel and the Palestinians in bed together and tell them to make up and get along. It's impossible. And that's why the resolve of Netanyahu, and I think this is true of the Israeli government, is never again. There's not going to be a deal with the devil. Is that right?
Absolutely. And also, I think it's important to note that the Palestinians don't believe in a two-state solution. They absolutely don't. It's been off the table in Palestinian narrative here for at least a decade. They have been promoting a one-state solution, which basically is bring back all of the refugees from Jordan, from Syria, and basically establish a government here that is not, the majority is Muslim, not Jewish, and so the Jews are basically defeated as there's no Jewish state. So that's their one-state solution. And Israel knows this, the Palestinians know this, but there is this political narrative, this kind of magical thinking that persists throughout the rest of the Western world that somehow a two-state solution is doable. It's not. And both sides know it here.
Exactly. Well, if you look at everything from a secular perspective and you just wipe out the religious, the deeply held religions of that area, everybody should be able to get along, everybody should be able to be at peace. This is generational. This goes back many generations of hatred and all those types of things. So the Bible says at the end, Israel will be hated by all the nations, that all the nations would ultimately gather against Israel at Jerusalem. Of course, that's Zechariah, that's Joel 3, all through the Old Testament. So this is what we're seeing happening, unfolding. Let's talk about Iran for just a minute now. The red line that existed has been erased. For the first time, Iran has directly attacked the state of Israel. Okay, so now in the world, for the last few days at least, Iran has been under scrutiny. There have been many nations that have rebuked them for what they did, standing against them. Is there any practical penalty that they're playing, as in sanctions or as in anything like that?
Well, one benefit to Israel in all of this is that, at least for now, international opinion has shifted somewhat back in favor of Israel. The international opinion was condemning Israel very, very strictly and firmly up until the attack because of its war in Gaza. Now there is this condemnation of Iran, and we can only hope that there is some degree of waking up on the part of Western nations about what Iran's ambitions are, which is to establish a global caliphate. It's not a regional thing. They literally want to see the world taken over, led by their Mahdi, which is, I think, how you say it in Arabic. So, I don't know. I think in the end, the military here is very, very clear. As you know, I recently interviewed Brigadier General Amir Avivi, and it was just, I think, posted yesterday. Now, that interview took place before the attack, but the doctrine he laid out there for Israel is the same doctrine that exists today, which is that we must be strong. Hamas must be defeated. Hezbollah must be pushed back, Israel cannot allow this situation to continue in the north with more than 60,000 Israelis displaced from their homes and their businesses. This cannot continue. And then, of course, we all know that at the center of the spider web is the spider, Iran. And Iran has to be dealt with. When I spoke with General Avibi, I said, don't we risk, if we take on Iran, I said, don't we risk stirring up a hornet's nest of the new global alliance that's trying to take place with Iran, China, Russia, and North Korea, maybe Turkey? And he said, no, just the opposite. He said, if we don't respond, then those entities become emboldened. They believe that, all we've done so far is our sanctions. And they're overcoming those sanctions with their economic coalition. So they believe that the United States has the ability, the military ability to respond, but they don't think it has the will. And he said, as long as they believe that, they're going to just get worse and worse. Russia has invaded Ukraine, and it might be Poland next. It might be other parts of Europe. As for China, it's been threatening Taiwan for a long time, and flying jets and invading its airspace. At some point, it seems like it's determined to take Taiwan for its own. So he said, if we don't respond, he said, but when you have a coalition like this, there are, the strong ones. He said, it would be foolish to attack Russia or China. Go for the weak one. The weak one is Iran. And he said that if we give a strong response to Iran, he said we, not just Israel. He meant a coalition, especially with the help of the United States. He said the U.S. has to partner with us in this and go after Iran, and that will send an unmistakable message to Russia and China and this attempt to form a new global order. And it will tell them, no, we are willing to stand firm. We're not just going to do words and sanctions. We're willing to fight for what is right.
That's exactly right. Well, you said something earlier about Iran's desire for world domination. See, the word Islam means submit, and their vision is for world submission to Islam. And Netanyahu has said repeatedly, if we're not fighting Hamas just related to Israel, if they beat us, they're coming for you. And that's exactly right. That's like the Nazi regime. You don't exterminate this here, it's going to spread all over the world. And of course, there's Muslims all over the world that would be greatly emboldened by a victory over Israel. So southern Iran, the Jeremiah 49 prophecy, is a devastating blow on Elam, southern Iran. Interestingly, that's where they have the Bushehr nuclear facility. That's where they have many of their missile launchers and their nuclear facilities. God says, I'm going to knock the bow out of your hand in the height of your power, and I'm going to judge your princes. And it says, it will be so desolate in Elam after the devastation, there won't be a nation on earth where someone from Elam hasn't moved. So this is talking about a devastating attack. And of course, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen in the next few days, but it could.
You know what? At this point, for my part, I hope it does, but we'll see.
Well, so the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, they have turned a blind eye to Iran. Iran has defied the world community related to nuclear weapons, and recently the IAEA came out and said, we have no idea what's going on in Iran, but we do know they've made tremendous strides. So they have a hypersonic missile in Iran that can reach Israel in, I think it's 4 minutes, or it's 400 seconds, 6.66 minutes. And so I think the missiles that came in last weekend, it took 4 or 5 hours for them to get there.
Well, there were a mixture of things, and some of them were intercontinental missiles, and or ones that can go, I think, a range of 1,500 miles. I forget what the name of them, but they were launched later, and they did, in fact, arrive in Israel about 6 minutes after they were launched. So the drones were launched, and those took several hours, but they waited until the drones were close, and then they fired some of these other missiles, which came in rather quickly.
Well, 2 years ago, my book Tipping Point came out, and in the book Tipping Point, I predict that Israel will strike Iran because it's an existential threat. not only was the attack last weekend, but if they have a nuclear weapon, Brian, they're going to fire it at Israel. And one nuclear missile landing in Israel is game, set, and match. It's just it's devastation. And so it's an existential threat. They have now given Israel an opportunity to respond. Now, again, we don't know exactly how that response will play out. But the thing, Israel is known for decisive responses to military attacks. They're strong. You punch them, they're going to punch you back harder. And so whatever happens, I believe, like you, and like the general you were talking to, I believe it's going to be a decisive blow. So let's just say that Israel does respond here in the next few days. What is Israel's capability militarily to defend their borders? I mean, they've got a multi-front war going on, and it just seems like they're spread really thin.
They are. The military objective that Israel embraced from October 7 forward was first, defeat Hamas, defend ourselves against Hezbollah, because there was a very keen concern that Hezbollah may launch a full-blown attack too. That was on everybody's minds on October 7 and 8. They didn't, but they have entered into the fray, and what's been going on with Hezbollah in the north is a virtual war. But Hamas has to be defeated first. Now that whole doctrine has been kind of mixed up or upset now because of the attack from Iran on Sunday. So we're engaging in speculation here. There's no doubt that Israel is spread thin in terms of manpower, and it really doesn't have, in my opinion, it doesn't have the necessary personnel to take on a full-blown war on two fronts. Now, as we have seen, Israel in fact withdrew most of its troops from Gaza before this attack from Iran. Perhaps in anticipation of it, perhaps in anticipation of invading and dealing with Rafah in the south of Gaza. We don't know. I mean, this has been actually perplexing and troubling to a lot of Israelis. Why did we do this? Maybe they're ready for something to happen in the north. They knew that there might be a need for their personnel to go up there. Also, people needed a break. I mean, a lot of people hadn't seen their families or been to their work for months. So Israel has a lot of air power and military power, but it doesn't really have the personnel to fight a war on two fronts. If it goes after Iran right now, it's not going to be sending troops on the ground, obviously, to Iran. It's too far away. And if Iran decides to actually do something in a major counter answer and authorize Hezbollah to launch its 100,000 plus missiles, which can hit any place in Israel, then yeah, it's going to be problematic. But it's not going to be so much a boots on the ground thing. It's going to be all these missiles coming in again, like it was on Sunday.
It's not going to be a conventional war. And Israel has tremendous firepower militarily. So let's talk about politics for just a minute, Brian. So Netanyahu is under fire, under scrutiny. Is there a movement to oust him?
Well, there's certainly before October 7, about half the country was out in protests at least every Saturday night after Shabbat, calling for new elections. The coalition that Netanyahu put together after this last election is unlike any other coalition he's had in the past. In the past, his coalition has included the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox Jewish parties, but he's always had a moderate, non-religious party as part of the coalition. And so what he was able to do was he was able to say to the ultra-Orthodox, I can't really do what you want me to do right now, because if I do, this other part of our coalition will leave and the government will fall. Okay? That's not the case anymore. Now, everybody in his coalition is from these ultra-Orthodox religious parties. And his government is held captive to that. It can't stay in power without them. And so they've been driving an agenda which is often problematic. One of the things that is the greatest irritants in Israel is that the young men of these Haredim do not serve in the IDF. And we need the personnel, we need the boots on the ground. Now, they would not have to be even in battle. They could be doing support work, volunteer work, working in the background. But they won't do it. They absolutely resolutely refuse. And this is, when you have others, every Israeli here has a family member or friend who's either wounded or fallen in battle. And it is visceral here. And then to have a group of people within the country say, no, we're not going to do anything. We refuse to serve, to defend this country. But by the way, we want all your money. We want your money to come in to fund everything for us, but we don't pay taxes because they don't work. And they won't fight in the military. This is not a formula for endearing the government to the rest of the culture. So it's not, sometimes I think in the U.S., what's happening in Israel is framed as if it was a U.S. left-right issue. It isn't so much like, it isn't that. There's some of that, but it's actually more of a religious to moving towards secular, if you will. But it's a religious, ultra-religious to non-religious spectrum.
You know something, the good news in all of this is Jesus is coming. Jesus said, when you see all these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your head, your redemption draws near. And I believe that Jesus is, the rapture could happen at any time. Nothing else has to happen for the rapture to happen when Jesus comes for his church. Everything happening, all the signs of the times are pointing to the fact he's at the door. And so I'm just saying that's the exciting part, is we're not going to go through the tribulation. We're not going to go through the wrath. We're not going to see the Antichrist when he appears. We're going to be with Jesus, and I believe he could come at any minute. And so I want to thank you for being a subscriber to endtimes.com. If you're not a subscriber, go to endtimes.com, become a subscriber. But I also want to ask you for some help today. Months ago, we did not have Brian Schrager as our Israel correspondent, but we needed one. And I asked you guys to help us financially, and you did, and we hired Brian. Brian's been a huge blessing. And to have him on the ground right now with everything going on there is just a huge blessing. And so thank you for helping with that. We have 3 production positions that we need to fill here at endtimes.com. We're growing. We're trying to reach more people. We're trying to reach you better than ever. We don't raise our price for a subscription at $7 a month, but we do ask you if you would pray about helping us. Some of you, the Lord has blessed you financially, and you have that ability. I'm just saying we need you. These are the end times, I believe, and I believe this is a critical message to be sent out to people in the midst of all the anxiety and the deception that's happening. People need the truth, and so we rely on you to help us financially to do everything we do. And right now we need several production positions. And so go to endtimes.com if you can help us. Some of you have really been touched by this ministry because you tell me. You write in or I see you on the street, you tell me. And if this ministry's touched you and the Lord's blessed you financially, would you help us? Anything that you give is going to be a blessing. Some of you could give more. You give an extraordinary gift to help us. We will use that to help to hire some positions to grow this ministry, to reach people, as many people as we possibly can before the Lord's return. You go to endtimes.com, right there where it says donate. You can give a recurring gift or you can give a one-time gift. Either way, we appreciate so much every single thing you do to help us. And I know that you like our programs, and many of you tune in, but we hope it's a blessing to you. And we're going to keep you up to date on anything that's happening in Israel, Israel's response to Iran, Iran's further response, all the things happening over there. We're going to keep you up to date. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'll see you next time. God bless you.